Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale as well as the latest episode of Stumptown. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when to start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Riverdale, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Stumptown. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Riverdale. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're kind of fast forwarding through the summer and everything, and now it's kind of, school year starting up again. And luckily, obviously, Archie is still dealing with obviously losing Fred, but obviously, luckily he's had, Jughead, Betty, and Veronica be there to kind of, help him through everything. So he is much better, and obviously they're going to make the most out of this. This is their senior year and everything, but obviously there's some changes. The fact of the matter is they kind of got a D-bag of a principal, Mr. Honey, which is, I'm interested to see what they do with that, because it seems like they're setting him up to just be the fact is of so much went by. I mean, to be fair, it's not like Weatherby was the best person in it. There was a part of me wondered too, I was like, where is Weatherby? Whatever happened? I was like, oh, right. He was with the farm. I totally forgot about that for a second. I was like, right, that explains that, because I was like, did he get killed off or something? I was like, what is, right, the farm. But nevertheless, I guess for him, it's literally so much crap is kind of going down at this school. So it's kind of like, whether it be G&G, everything related to the farm, it's like, yeah, I'm going to bring some structure back to it or something like that. So I guess that's the potential explanation for that and why he's kind of a hard ass. Either way, it's just interesting, and obviously what they're setting up, the kind of bad blood between him and Cheryl, because Cheryl doesn't really take kindly to answering to anybody. She kind of does her own thing. It's more so than anything, it's kind of like, yeah, you're the principal, whatever, sure, but it's like the moment he challenged her authority, she didn't like that. It's like she said herself, she's Queen Bee around here. So you might be Honey, but I'm still Queen Bee around here, essentially. So that's definitely interesting that they're butting heads. And I'm wondering why I guess he just wants to kind of knock everyone into place and show, it's like, I got to have a firm stance, because it's like, why are you starting shit with Cheryl is kind of my point of shutting down the party she's got. Even the fact, I could get it. You're like, oh, I want to have another dance because literally last time we had one, a whole bunch of people got murdered. And, Cheryl trying to be like, the fact of the matter is, after losing my brother, the dance actually helped. And he's still like, no. And I guess in her mind, it's like, wait, I just gave you a heartfelt reason why there should be a dance, because it helps us deal with tragedy. And basically it helped me with my tragedy. And you saying no is just like you spit in my face about my brother's death. I'm sure that's how Cheryl potentially internalized it. But obviously later on, he shuts down her party too. I even love the FP shows up and is like, you better not be drinking anything out of that cup. Whatever's in that cup, Jughead, you better not be drinking. And Jughead just kind of tilts the cup over and lets it pour out. I don't know why that just resonated so hard with me. But nevertheless, we have this cool thing of Archie bringing Mad Dog to school, because he's trying to it's like, hey, you need to get an education and everything. Because for him, he's pushing to hey, I'm going to get my diploma because that's what my dad would want. And I think, I brought it up before, I think it's kind of nice that I think that's going to be an element we see continue on, that Archie is going to try to be, be the best version of himself, be the version of himself that could make his dad proud, and that's something he's going to be striving for. So I think it's like, hey, I'm getting my diploma because it's what my dad would want. And I think, his dad, helped out so many people. So I think Archie's kind of doing that. It's like, hey, Mad Dog's already his buddy, so it's like, hey, we should also, you go to school, hey, try out for football too. Obviously that turns into a complicated thing because of Reggie, feels like he's being challenged, because for him it's like, I've always been captain since, I think he said since his sophomore year, he's kind of been unchallenged. And now it's like, plus his dad's there kind of getting on him. And I was wondering why Archie was kind of, because Archie's like, yeah, I get it, your dad was kind of riding you hard, but don't be starting stuff with Mad Dog. But it's like, oh, it's because Archie didn't know about the whole situation. And we got a peek into that last season, because the moment, Reggie had brought up Griffin and Gargoyles to his dad, and it pissed him off and he hit him. That was the first instance of that, and it kind of brought it back to be like, oh, that's still something we haven't dealt with. We should deal with that. And obviously he's acting out a little bit, drinking at the party, kind of being a bit of a D-bag, which obviously Reggie already had his moments of he could easily be a D-bag, but now in the grand scheme of things, it makes more sense, because he's kind of acting out a little bit, because being at school, it's because it's the one place he could probably feel powerful, so that's why he holds that position. So, or because his dad pays such attention, it's like the better he's doing, the less likely his dad is to beat him and hit him for no reason. I mean, it doesn't justify, even if he's failing at something, doesn't justify it. But in his mind, it's probably like, the better I do, the more I stay on top. And like I said, I think it's also a control thing of like, if I'm in control of this one aspect of my life, I can be top dog essentially, you know, aside from when I'm home. It's a, I don't know if the conversation ever came up about his mom. I would assume she's just not in the picture. Like, I would assume she's going, because the only thing that comes up in conversation is his dad. So I don't know if that, I feel like that was something they might have referenced in the past, but I don't remember as well. But nevertheless, it is kind of neat that Archie does stick up for him, because obviously he doesn't tolerate that. Because, you know, Archie comes from a space of like, hey, I had a really good dad. Reggie doesn't deserve having basically a piece of shit dad like you. And that's actually interesting, you know. It leads into a heart-to-heart that Archie had with Reggie. Because the fact of the matter is, he's like, I was always envious of you and your dad. Like, no matter what you did, your dad was always there to support you. And for him, he's like, the fact is, Mr. Andrews dying sucked, because I could not help but think, like, what if it was my dad? In the sense of, I don't, you could take that two ways. My immediate thought was kind of like, well, one way you could take it is like, oh, like, you know, despite everything, maybe I still love my dad, so if he did die, how would I feel about it? But the other side of it, it's like, your dad was a really good dude. My dad's kind of an asshole. Like, it should have been him. It's always the good people that kind of, you know, die young, essentially, you know. And so he's probably like, yeah, the world should have taken an asshole like my dad rather than your dad, you know. So that's how I interpreted it. But maybe the other way is kind of what it might have leaned towards. But either way, he smashed up his dad's car, because for him it's like, yeah, like, I've tried to talk to my dad before about everything that he does, and it's just like, he doesn't want to listen, so this will get him to listen, you know. So, which he even talks about later on, which I was kind of scared about. There was a part of me that thought like shit would get a little real, like severely real, and it's like, oh, his dad might snap and really, really hurt him, if not downright end up killing him, which that would have been a super dark turn to that. But for Reggie, it's like, me and my dad, we actually talked. Part of me was almost thinking like, did he kick you out of the house or something? Is he like, oh, you're no son of mine, get out of here? I was kind of leaning in that way too, but he's just like, no, we talked through some things, and, you know, he's like, he's definitely not going to be showing up anymore. So I guess it kind of was like a wake-up call for his dad. The question is, you know, sadly in situations like this, it'll stop for a little while, but maybe they'll find themselves back in that cycle again, and it might turn into a darker story where it's like you end up seeing like Reggie ultimately killing his dad in like self-defense or something. Maybe, I don't know. That story, I'm interested to see whether that really is the end of that, or is there going to be more to that. So we'll see, because I mean, either way, like, he's got, you know, Archie has his back, you know, because it's like, you know, it's like, yeah, we're always going to be bros, you know. So that was kind of a neat element to that. Some other interesting things, we got Jughead's side of the story, where it's a situation of he's being invited to this new school by this dude named Mr. Was it Chippings, who's played by Sam Witwer, which obviously, if you know, CW-wise is interesting because, well, many different levels. Obviously, he was most recently in Supergirl last season. That was interesting. And on top of that, he was, if you want to go further back in the CW's history, back when it was the WB, he played Doomsday, the human form of Doomsday in Smallville in season 8. And like, obviously that's the Supergirl and Smallville connection there, but also just the CW WB connection in general as well. But I just thought that was kind of neat. I was like, oh man, I think it's just kind of like because of the whole filming in Vancouver and stuff like that, and you know, it makes stuff like that crossover stuff so much easier like that. I don't know. There's also like one of the people the first dude he met at the school that Jughead met at the school was interesting. That was that actor. He was just in Deadly Class. There was another character like in that little reading class of theirs. The kid with the glasses. He looks so familiar, but I don't remember what I know him from. I just can't place it. He seems so familiar. But regardless, Jughead's being offered this chance to go to this very, like, you know, highbrow school, but at first he turns it down because, like, obviously he wants to stay with Betty, and obviously all his friends are there. It also means moving away from, you know, his home and being away from his family, you know, JB, as well as his dad, you know, especially after everything that's kind of going down. So there's that side of things. But, you know, eventually, you know, because his dad's pushing for it. It's like, you have such a great opportunity here. Don't waste it. The fact of the matter, this is a really good school. I also think it is interesting that Chippings just seemed like he was so like, nah, you said no at the school. I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to show up at your house. It just, he seems so eager to get Jughead there, and I'm curious because it's something we end up finding out later on that actually Jughead's grandfather actually went to the school for a little while, but it's like, oh, he abandoned it because it was like, for him, it's like, and FP was like, oh, he abandoned a lot of things. He abandoned everything, including me. Went for cigarettes one day, never came back. So it's like, I didn't want my father's legacy to be yours. Like, I want you to make your own choices, not it kind of being a legacy thing, which I'm wondering, is that legacy situation tying into why they're pushing for Jughead there? I don't know. I just feel, maybe, and there we find out a story reason why he was on, like, Jughead's grandfather was only there for 6 months. Maybe there was a little bit more, and maybe that led to a catalyst of events that led to him kind of abandoning other things. Maybe that's just a little side note, but I feel like since they made a point of that, makes me think that's going to be plot relevant at some point, soon, later. We'll ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. So, but he is going to be attending the school now. I'm curious to see what that ends up looking like. It's actually interesting because Jughead's the only character that's literally went to different schools. Obviously, except for everyone that was like in from Southside High that moved over here to Riverdale, like the North Side. Aside from that, but like even amongst the main characters, he's the only one that's attended a different school, and now he's attending another different school. So I'm interested to see ultimately where that ends up taking us going forward with all of that. So there's that. Then there's there's everything with Veronica, which she's dealing with the whole complicated situation. It's actually kind of interesting because in a twisted way, she's kind of a celebrity because both of her parents are in prison, like her dad for being the gangster that he is, and that her mom potentially for the whole, oh, you tried to murder your husband. So there's that whole thing, which for her, it's kind of like, oh, both my parents are criminals. They can rot. So she's kind of enjoying her freedom, even to the point like her, Archie, Betty, and Jughead were over there, which is something I noticed at the beginning scene. I was like, they're, like, hey, oh, Archie and Veronica are over there banging it out. And it's like, oh, Betty and Jughead are too. And but maybe that's just me. I can never be like, yo, let's bang it out while our best friends, literally both of our best friends over there banging it out too. I'm weird. I don't think I could be okay with that. It was just something that got in my head. I'm like, I don't think I'd be down for that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, that, like I said, that's just kind of a step into my mind. But it is interesting because obviously, like, she has that struggle, even to the point at school it's becoming a thing. Even Honey's making a point of it because at first I'm like, oh, I guess it's because it's a distraction. So many like reporters and stuff like that busting into the school to get pictures of her and everything, even paying students to get pictures of Veronica. But it's like, no, it's because there are certain news reports coming out saying that she was behind all the criminal stuff that her dad's being blamed for, which Veronica visits her dad. Is like, is this some kind of little ploy for you? But he's like, no, I'm here to basically remind you, you are a lodge. There's no getting away from it. You did a lot of terrible stuff, so it's kind of like you have to deal with it, which she ultimately goes, you know what? I am going to face up to it. Yes, I am a lodge. The fact of the matter is I did stuff, but it was under duress because my father threatened me. Not only threatened you, threatened a lot of people you were close to. Your dad, let's face it, Hiram's not a good guy, which obviously there's the complicated thing of he randomly shows his nature as a good guy, but it kind of gets outweighed by all the terrible things that he does and is a part of. So there's that. So, but for Veronica, at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not going to choose either one of my parents' side. I'm the only person I'm looking out for in this lodge situation is myself. Even going to the point, like, she's applying for Harvard, and she's like, I'm just going to use my mom's maiden name, Gomez, because it's like, I'm not going to go down, because, there's too much history and bad blood associated with the lodge name, especially with everything that's literally going down now, just Sully's the name anymore. So it's like, it will follow her for the rest of her life if she does that. But I think no matter, even if she changes her name, there's still no getting away from who your parents are, sadly, so. Which I'm interested to kind of dive into that, everything with Hiram, everything with Hermione, about everything that they're going through from a legal perspective. It is kind of interesting that they are both in jail and what that really means for their stories and, where that will ultimately end up taking their stories. But I think it's kind of a nice step in Veronica's, because she always kind of got caught up in her parents' drama. So now I think she's kind of free of that and kind of able to do her own thing, be her own person without having to be Veronica Law. She gets to just be Veronica, to a certain extent. So I'm curious to kind of dive into that and see whether there will be any more reports. She did say this would be my first and only comment beyond this. It's like, you got this report, after this, leave me the hell alone. So she's kind of made it perfectly clear where she stands in that regard. aside from all of that, there's everything with Betty and Kevin. Obviously, Betty's not on the best of terms with Kevin because Kevin is like, well, yeah, you were with the farm and you did some terrible, terrible things. You helped them potentially do terrible, terrible things to me and the people I care about. You literally took me to be lobotomized. I thought, you were like my best friend, and like, which Kevin apologized for it because he's like, I was so caught up in everything. But now it's like he's all alone because the people he cares about most, including Fang, is gone because of this whole situation. So now it's the thing of like, okay, so how do we handle this? Well, Charles, her brother, has been keeping tabs on Kevin because he figured like, yeah, Kevin's totally not done with the farm. He's actually been trying to get in contact with Fang, trying to get in contact with them in the sense of like, hey, let me know where you are because I want to join with you guys. I miss you, Fang, but more so than anything, it's like I miss the farm, I miss all of that. He's still brainwashed. Because it was never like he ever got officially deprogrammed. He never got officially deprogrammed. And I'm sure like that's probably gotten even worse, because it's almost the farm and Edgar and everything associated with it's like a drug, and it's like, oh, I haven't got my drug. He gets a little hit here and there from being in contact with Fame, but it's still kind of like, yo, when am I get the real deal? When am I get the real hit? When am I gonna, it is almost like a drug, that kind of like cult-like obsession and programming that they've done to his brain. So they try to use him, but it doesn't prove to be useful because obviously they've kept Kevin at a arm's length, because even Fang is like, whoa, you can't hug me. The fact of the matter is, Edgar just doesn't know you can be trusted. It's like, despite everything Kevin did, but I guess because there was questioning of his loyalty, I guess that kind of like made it so it's like, oh, you kind of have to be left behind, which is so interesting when you actually think about it, because like, well, obviously, Cheryl and Tony were able to break free of it, obviously, eventually, but Kevin was still so integral part of that, so it's like it still hasn't 100% been broken for him. So, but nevertheless, I think Betty made a major mistake when she told him. I was like, don't tell him about your mom. And it's like, oh, my mom's basically undercover. It's like, oh, don't tell him that. It's like, we'll say that it was Penny Blossom behind all of this. She's the informant that the FBI is like, I wish you didn't say it. Kevin shows up later. He's like, oh, no, I found him. I tracked him down, told him it was Penny. And I'm like, he's so full of shit. He's so full of shit. I know it. Which is so interesting because later on, like when we get that time skip this spring break, we see, because obviously they're looking for Jughead, which is interesting because it makes you wonder, is that, I'm assuming that scene's supposed to take place after season 4's finale, how that little time skip at the end there where they're burning Jughead stuff. Once again, I don't think Jughead is dead and that they murdered him. I think, like I said, Jughead might have killed someone in self-defense or something, but because it wouldn't have looked that way, they're burning evidence to cover up for him. So I think they went looking for him to be like, oh, I think it's a story that they concocted to make it seem like, hey, oh man, Jughead's missing, like what's going on, like to cover up like maybe missing time and stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking. That's where my mind is. Like, it was like that in season 4 of like, no, they didn't kill Jughead. He might have killed someone and he was covered in blood and they're disposing of the evidence. It's like, we don't tell this to no one because basically they're going to look after Jughead. That's where I am at. Like, I'm not, like the whole thought of like, oh, they potentially, it's like, that didn't even cross my mind. So, but whether that's the exact circumstances or whether something else is to be, seen. So, and also I could be wrong. That whole spring break thing, that could be before they find him. Like, he is missing, but then the trio of Archie, Betty, and Veronica find him, and then we get to that scene at the end of season 4 where they're burning the clothes. So it depends on like, the order of events, and whichever regard. But like the point I was making is Kevin was there beside Betty, so it's like, okay, so either he's kind of feeding them false information so him and Betty are still on good terms, or maybe that's much later on when it's like, oh, he's been fully deprogrammed, or maybe they're still on bad terms and he's there trying to apologize and she's not really listening. It's just like, you're essentially, you continue to be dead to me. I don't know. We'll see about that. But like I said, I just feel like Kevin is full of BS. He's ended up saying like Edgar's got weapons and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a little trap they have set. I mean, this could have, because obviously they've lost contact with Alice. What begs the question is like, well, did Alice get suckered into this whole situation and like, become fully invested in this, that she's no longer undercover, that she did get brainwashed herself? Like, what's going to happen in that regard? Obviously, the question applies. I mean, because obviously it was just Alice, because that doesn't speak on, the whole Polly situation either, but, because she's 100% invested in this whole farm situation. So regardless, a lot of interesting things set up in this episode. I am very, very interested to see where ultimately all of this takes us going forward. And now moving on to this week's episode of Stumptown, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do appreciate the fact is that this last week's episode was kind of like a two-parter in the sense of like, not everything was 100% resolved with the case, and obviously carrying over. We have Dex busting up Artie's car. Obviously, she's dead set on getting revenge and everything. Well, basically, she wants to kind of set things right because it's not only that Artie played her, more so than anything, it's just like Randall's a terrible dude, but also at the same time, it's like Artie's going along with him and working with him. So that's the whole like aspect of like Dex doesn't like being played like that. And just, especially because, it's the tough part about caring so much, Dex makes it seem like almost like she's laissez-faire, kind of doesn't care about everything and anyone in certain regards, but she does. She cares. She kind of puts her heart on the sleeve, especially because she's very dedicated to this case because she wants to help Candace out. She wants to make sure that Candace is able to keep her daughter. There's actually a line I thought was kind of interesting. It's because basically she doesn't want, Dex doesn't want Candace to go through what she went through, or rather her daughter go through, like being taken away or at the very least left behind. So now brings up the conversation of their parents. Like that's still kind of, her and Ansel's parents are kind of like okay, so what's that's all about? Because the fact of the matter is like, it's a subject she doesn't want to talk about. She got super quiet when it came to the conversation about her dad last episode. So that begs the question, did they abandon her? Did one of her parents die? Did the other one? Or could it have been a metaphorical abandonment by you dying? But it seems more so like they weren't around by like they left. Like I said, maybe it was one of her parents died. Like maybe her mom died and her dad was around, but he up and left him. Because there was even a point later on where she was talking to Ansel, where Ansel kind of referenced the fact is he remembered people showing up in black cars too. So like most likely social services. And the question is, that's probably like around the time where it was just her and Ansel, and she was probably like, I'm the older sister, I'm looking after him, but she probably wasn't old enough to 100% take responsibility for him. Or maybe this is referencing something that went down with their parents, or I don't know. I like that that's an element of like, okay, so what's that? We're learning little by little like what that is. We're chipping away at that past. It does beg a question because I'm curious, like, does Gray know a lot of that stuff? I'm assuming so, because they've had like 6 years to know each other. But because obviously he knows all there is to know about Dex, but obviously Dex doesn't know everything there is to know about Gray because he isn't an open book, which is interesting because Dex isn't one either. But still, in that one night, in that 24 hours, he learned so much about her. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but nevertheless. But kind of getting back on track with things, I love the fact is that Tuki's the one she's sending undercover to infiltrate to find out, like, kind of look into some of Randall's skeletons. And it's like, Tuki shows up in the suit and everything. And he's like, yeah, I got this. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to need you to go dress as a janitor. He's like, isn't that culturally sensitive? And Greg corrects him, insensitive. He's like, yeah, whatever. It's like, don't you think that's a little messed up? You got me dressing up like a janitor. It's like, well, it's the, best way to kind of get you. And he's like, come on, I don't have to be a janitor. I could be like, one of those guys that's coming to Shark Tank. I'm here to build something. It's like, all right, what? And he just sits there, and Gray's kind of looking at him. It's almost like he's looking at Gray to kind of get some ideas. And it's just like, yeah, we need you to be the janitor. It's like, you're not going to come up with anything. It's like, if you want to, you can pretend to be the janitor who's going to take over everything eventually. He's like, I can play that part. Because Gray was suggesting, you're not actually being a janitor. You're just playing the part. But for him, it's like, yeah, but I'm feeding into stereotypes. And it's like, no, I should be much more. I can do this, So I just thought that was kind of neat. I even love when he ends up getting the file and everything, and that security guard, I wonder what that security guard was going to probably say to him, was like, what were you doing in there and stuff like that. He could have handled that situation way differently than he did, but obviously he's running, and it looks like he's got a pretty good head start on the security guard. I was like, oh, maybe he'll get away. I was like, I kind of feel like he wouldn't, but oh, never mind, because he's starting to slow down because he's getting tired. But he knocks the guard out. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's going to be this. Nope, Artie's there, and he takes the file from me. Well, he thinks it's the file, but it's like, hey, it's like, yeah, sadly, the files got taken from me. But don't you want to know what's in my pants? Turns out he had taken the copies and the original files just in case the original files got taken. That no one think that he take the duplicates as well. Regardless, I just thought that was so beautiful. Just use of Tukey in this episode. I just thought that was kind of nice. But obviously, it just reveals that Randall is doing some shady stuff. Well, it turns out, like, the files they stole in particular are about a school that he's building on the reservation. And obviously, that involves Sue Lin, who shows up. And every time, it's just kind of like, you can tell, like, Dexter just kind of has to take that deep sigh of just, oh, okay, so what's going to happen this time? You know, so Sue Lin's basically threatening her. It's like, oh, yeah, you're gambling there. It's like, no, because I helped you out. That was supposed to be clear. Well, did I clear it? It's kind of like, because it's a situation of, like, the school is being built, you know, he's putting forth all of his money and effort and stuff like that, and this could be a good, you know, his name attached can draw a lot of attention to the reservation. So it can basically put them on the map and kind of make their voices be heard. They can have a lot more of an audience and more people eyes on them so that they can, you know, do what needs to be done to make sure that everyone and everything is taken care of type of situation. Because I guess in her mind, it's like the reservation will have a little more validity if it has a name like Randall's behind it and him and his company. So Sue Lin's even threatening, like, you've got like 10 days to do whatever you're going to do, because after that, well, basically you have to, if you don't, you're going to be arrested or just straight up back down from this case. So it puts Dex in that very complicated thing. She gets her car towed because of Artie, and she also gets arrested. I even love Lieutenant Cosgrove. It's like, man, all right, so why? Oh, like, this is why you're also here, because of there's actually clear video of you smashing up his car. And I love Dex's super lame ass excuse of like, yeah, like I thought it was my car. It's like, you thought it was yours? Yeah, like I thought mine was like this old model that turns out to have a pinata inside. It's like, that's what I get. You know, I'm never going to believe anything on the internet again. It's like, honestly, it's like, I know you're so full of shit, but she's like, the fact of the matter is, because obviously that's like the lamest of lamest excuses you could come up with, and I love it. But for her, Cosgrove is like, the fact of the matter is, Artie has no good standings with the department anyway, so honestly, he's kind of a scumbag, so, you know, more power to you. The fact is, you want to tell me you thought it was piano, that it was your car? Sure, case closed, we're done. And I was like, oh, that's pretty dope. But then we also learn, like, why Artie's in bad standing with the department, because apparently he stole $30,000, which that's something we'll get to in a second. But also I love, you know, it's like, oh, thanks for letting me go. But then Dex is also like, it's like, don't worry, your car is returned. You can go. It's like, hey, I think Lieutenant Cosgrove is actually warming up to Dex. Just a tiny bit. So I just thought that was kind of pretty neat. But sadly, everything plays out that, you know, Candace loses her daughter, because I had skipped over it, but there was that meeting Dex had with Randall, which he just oozes douchebag, because the fact of the matter is, because he wants to be in control, because even Dex brings it up, it's like, you literally told Candace to have an abortion, but you want the child now. It's like, no, you can't just win, you have to destroy people, because you didn't want that baby before, but it's because your power tripping and being like, that baby's mine. The fact that I'm not going to let someone like Candace, someone of Candace's stature and status, raise that child. I'm going to raise that child in the good living that it's going to have, you know. It's like, oh, like, the fact of the matter is, oh, didn't I see you hit a woman on an elevator, you know? And he's kind of being like, oh, no one knows the stresses I'm going. It's like, nobody wants to hear that bullshit, you know? So it's that thing. And even that point where he grabs onto Dex's hand, I was like, arm. It's like, well, no, there's instances, you know, she probably would have just punched him in the face, but it's like, that wouldn't do anything. But it's like, oh, you know who you're up against. It's like, kind of do. At that moment, it just verifies even more how true everything is about you. Because the fact is, he can't stand not lose. Because the simplest thing would be just to easily just let her live her life, get away from her, don't try to take from her, especially taking her daughter from her. Because the whole point is, you want her to hurt. Because because she dares turn away from you, and it's like, all right, I'm done with you, but when I'm done with you, I'm going to take everything away. You know, like, it's full power tripping type of situation. But sadly, you know, Candace's daughter still gets stolen from her, or taken from her. Well, stolen, but taken. And the sucky thing is her having to actually hand her daughter over to Randall. It's just more of a dagger to the heart, which you can tell the look on Artie's face. Even he was kind of feeling bad about it, and even like Dax confronts him and everything. It's like, why would you? What are you doing? Like, the fact of the matter is, you weren't. You're a scumbag to the core, because now I know all there is to know about you. You sold at 30,000. You're a part of this. It's like, you're a complete and utter D-bag, essentially. Which I love later on. He shows up and he's like, you don't know what there is to know about me. She closes the door. He knocks again. He's explaining himself again. She closes the door and he knocks. It's like, can I please come in? I gotta talk to somebody. Like, he looks kind of pitiful. And Ansel, being, the sweetheart that he is just kind of like, Dax, you gotta let him in. You're gonna help people, right? Kind of reminding him why she does what she does. Because it's like, you made a promise to me all that time ago when the black cars came for me. He was like, I knew you would come for me and get me back because you promised. So I know that you'll help out this lady and her daughter too. So it's actually kind of sad because we end up hearing Artie's story and learning about, his daughter, because it turns out it was a situation. It was like, wasn't it like a bartender, or I think it was like a bartender he met. 9 months later, they had a baby. It was a situation where the baby had an illness that, it was a situation where the baby didn't make it and he wasn't there for the mother either. So for him, it's like, it turned him into a very cynical person, because for him, it's a situation of, you care too much. So it's like, all it basically does is lend you with hurt. So rather, because of that situation that hurt, he kind of went a little cynical and just kind of like stopped caring about anything. But for him, he now realized it's because it's not that he cared too much. It's because he didn't care enough. And he starts blaming himself, thinking like, I didn't do more. I wasn't there for the baby. I wasn't there for the mother, like, while she was dealing with all of that. I'm curious what the rest of that story is, though. Like, did he ever, did this situation with Dex ever kind of change his mind to kind of revisit that, or like, whatever happened in that regard? It's just kind of like, maybe she moved on with her life, whatever the case may be. It was still a very sad situation. Obviously, Dex is like, well, I don't know whether to take that as the truth or not, because the fact is, all you've done is lie. But obviously, they work together and actually, make a pretty good team of sneaking in to where they're constructing everything. There's like shipments and stuff, because they end up interviewing the guy who handled all those reports and stuff for him. And I love Dex kind of like blackmails him into it. It's like, oh yeah, the fact of the matter is Randall threatened you and stuff. Like, oh, he's not going to be happy when he learns that the fact of the matter is you're working with us. And it's like, oh, super bold move. Working with the ex-wife, well, the private detective hired by his ex-wife. And it's like, what are you talking about? And Ansel comes by and takes a picture of it. And it's like, oh, and I love like Dex having to like give the thumbs up in the photo and everything too. But regardless, that basically it turns out that he's shipping, what is it, like fake oxy or something like that. It's what the whole thing is. They end up discovering. I was curious to see where that situation went with Artie, because I was like, oh, is Artie straight up going to leave her? I was like, nah, he's going to come in and surprise us. Literally comes in, tackling one of the dudes, even kind of like spin kicks, knocks down another dude, and even Dex is kind of looking at him, and I forgot what it was he said, but he referenced that he does a certain thing, and Dex is like, yeah, sure, whatever. So as they're leaving, they run into Sulin, because that was something literally, Artie had brought up, because it's like, okay, Randall's doing all this. The question is, does Sulin know? Which I kind of figured, like, yeah, she probably didn't know, because we know that that's why things led to what they were, because that was something that came up in the first episode, that she backed away. She actually took, like, because she learned someone was kind of running, like, I think it was like drugs through the reservation. She found out, because it was a business partner, gathered up those drugs or their money or whatever and burned it all. So it was kind of like, yeah, she has a stance on that, because she doesn't want anything, like, the reservation already has like an uphill battle. Anything that would kind of taint that would kind of, make that uphill battle even more. But also, I'm sure on a personal level, it's just kind of like she's got to, I think there's certain slimy stuff that she'll kind of like, yeah, you're kind of slimy business-wise, I'll let it slide. But if you're doing completely heavily criminal shit, we got a problem. I think that's the whole thing. Because it does seem like she has a very gray area. Because even Dex bringing stuff up last episode of like, oh, what the guy you're getting in business with, but it didn't seem like Sulin cared. But maybe it's just because she didn't think Dex had any real proof. It's just like, well, it's a nasty divorce, so stuff is going to come up that might not be true. So maybe that's her way of looking at it. But like I said, I just think there is a level of how far she's willing to kind of look the other way in certain regards. Like I said, once it gets super criminal, whether that's just for the purpose of she doesn't want to fall back on the reservation, or whether it's more so like she herself or her moral compass won't allow it. It could be a combination of the two. But either way, after kind of presenting that to Sulin sits down with Randall and they set him up very nicely. It's like, yeah, you're actually going to build that school, even though you're trying to like postpone it so you can use this as an opportunity to smuggle stuff. But you're actually going to build a school. You're going to build up all this awesome stuff in it. You're also going to make sure that Candace is left alone. You give her daughter back. So that's pretty neat. I mean, I think he's kind of in a rock and a hard place. So I don't think there's no maneuvering for him. So he kind of has to like kind of stay as things are. So it's a win, like, because you kind of want him to kind of be arrested to kind of put the final nail in the coffin. But I think this is a win for now, and I think it will kind of put him in this place that he'll always basically be by, like, Dex and Sulin will always have him by the balls going forward. So I think that's a win in its own right as well. So I thought that was kind of a nice wrap up to the case, especially considering the fact is, you know, Candace gets her baby back, and, you know, Artie shows up, and, you know, Candace forgives him because I think despite everything, he did help get her daughter back in the end and help take down Randall. But also at the same time, you know, he gave her hope. You know, obviously he kind of broke that hope when he kind of took advantage of it. But, you know, still. It was also sweet too, you know, obviously he gives Dex her hours, her sheet, be like, yep, you did your, what was it, 1,500 hours? You're full-blown registered, you know, private eye now, so she can be official now. And it's also like, oh yeah, what's the name of your daughter? It's like, it was Ariana. I was like, oh. I wonder if that kind of derived from his name, you know, Ariana. Probably not. I'm probably just overthinking it. But I'm very curious to see if, you know, Dex and Artie end up crossing paths in the future, you know, on professional level. Probably from time to time, maybe. But see, I think that'd be kind of a neat, like, thing. But, so that's one side of the episode. The other side of the episode deals with the fact is that Kane ends up escaping from a police transport. So, a prison bus transport. So, there's that. And obviously, this hits home. I didn't even piece it together until the thing at the beginning kind of referenced the fact is, it's like, oh yeah, this is the widow of someone that I know that died. And he referenced the fact is, when he was talking to Gray, it's like, oh, someone I know was, Kane killed an informant of mine. I was like, oh, those two are this, right. And it turns out to be the case. It's because this case is so personal to Hoffman because Kane killed this dude named Darius, and I think it's because it's a common. He says that Darius was a friend, but you know, Cosgrove is kind of like he was just your CI. Like, I wonder, was there something there? Like, I guess even though they were like that was his CI and everything, it's like maybe they started off as friends, maybe they knew each other way back in the day, maybe they grew up type of situation, or maybe they become friends, and then, you know, it's like, hey, I turned to you because it's like maybe Darius had turned to him because he knew that Hoffman was a cop, or maybe they were just kind of like. Because the way Hoffman makes it sound like Darius came to him because, like, he was scared of Kane and stuff like that. So it's a sad situation because, like, obviously Hoffman kept being like, no, if I heard anything, you know, because it's like, because Darius kept being like, I think Kane knows. I just got this feeling. But Hoffman's like, we'd know if that was the case. But when he was leaving, Hoffman kind of had this look like, did the cops actually know? They heard word about it, but they were willing to take a risk? Because, I mean, was Hoffman willing to take that risk? Because they like, no, we'll take down Kane. It'll be a surefire thing. But sadly, for Darius, he ended up dying. And now it's a situation of, you know, Darius's widow. Like, this, obviously, it seems like her and Hoffman were on good terms because at the very least, you know, Kane was behind bars. But now that he's out, you know, it's kind of like, okay, you made all these promises, you know, before, and it's like my husband's killer got away. Because it actually turns out she actually went to go visit Kane because apparently he's looking for some plans of his from like a robbery or something that he was planning, and Darius had the plans. So, but it's like you show up or, you know, threatening her and her family. So, you know, typical bad guy thing. Well, I thought also what's kind of interesting was the fact is that Hoffman went to Gray and he was like, the fact of the matter is, I'm warning you that Kane got out. The fact of the matter is, we both know we got to protect the people we care about who don't know what's this all about. Essentially, like, we both know who Kane is and what he's capable of, but the people around us don't really know, so we got to protect them and look after them, right? So that's why he was kind of giving him the heads up. And obviously it hits hard with Gray because he ends up pulling out a gun from his safe. And obviously he's worried about Ansel because Ansel spends the most time at the bar, and it's like, if anything comes this way, it's going to most likely happen in a bar. So he tries to find a way around because, he and you can tell Ansel kind of picks up like, yeah, something's not right. He's very good at picking it up, Everyone likes to pretend like, oh, like everything's fine. Like when Dex was kind of down early in the episode, it's like, no, he saw that and he can see something's off with Gray, but Gray's just trying to pretend like everything's okay. I think he sees through like Gray's like smiling and everything, trying to pretend it's like everything. It's like, oh, you're doing such a great job. Fact of the matter is, you get paid to leave. And it's like, because Gray's trying to keep him away so he doesn't get dragged into all of this. So, I do like kind of like where things are kind of set up because obviously like Hoffman wants to deal with this case, but Cosgrove is kicking him off of it because it's like you're too personal to this. Like the fact is that you are so willing to go, you're going to go so far, and I'm worried what line he might cross it. He might, I think she's probably worried that he might end up killing Kane, and that's going to threaten and destroy his career. The fact is he might cross lines that he shouldn't, just trying to take Kane down again. So there's that. And then there's a situation at the end where we have Gray being taken by Kane. And he's like, you owe me $500,000. You want to have a plan to pay me? It's like, no. I'm the one coming up with plans now. It's time to get to work. Now, what we learned, not last episode, but in episode 2, was that Gray had talked about the fact that he went to prison for grand theft. So the question becomes, it must be a situation of the money must have been, I'm curious. The money was going to be used to finance the plan or something. Probably at the very least, it's because we know Darius had the plans or whatever. So I'm thinking in the pen, it probably came up about like, oh wait, you were in here for grand theft and everything, huh? Interesting. The fact of the matter is, it was probably always in the back of his mind of like, okay, I'm gonna use Gray if I ever need him. Gray owes me now $500,000. It's like, you'll clear that debt by doing some work for me, some grand theft stuff. So Gray's gonna be stealing some stuff from him, and I think this will be our instance to kind of really see what kind of thief Gray is. Like, what I mean is how skilled potentially he is. Is he kind of cat burglar level? Is he just very like really good at stealing? I mean, what level of stealing? What is he? Because he only said grand theft. I don't think he ever gotten. Maybe he did, but and I'm not remembering. But I don't think he went into specifics about what he's very good at. What he stole that kind of landed him in jail. Like I said, the question I'm just more so thinking is like, where does that $250,000 play? I guess that was supposed to be something because Kane knew he was going to get out eventually, whether it was like he broke out or whatever, and he was going to need money that wasn't seized by the police, so he needed some money off the boards. But neither Home Dude nor Gray figured he'd ever get out because he got life in prison. But when there's a will, there's a way, especially when criminals find a will and a way. So now that's something Gray's going to have to deal with. So I'm assuming next episode, like kind of all three stories are going to collide. The police side of things with Hoffman, which Hoffman's probably going to go a little rogue. He might even bring in Dex. This whole Gray situation might be something Gray obviously doesn't even tell Dex about, so it might be a continuous thing. It might not just be a one-off job. It might be multiple jobs, multiple pieces to one job. Whatever the case may be, I'm very, very interested to see where ultimately this all ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.